Welcome, welcome. We are here today at Co-Creative No Code's office hours. It's August 3rd, right? I'm losing track of the days again. We're here with Jacob and Kim, and I'm sure Thomas will be joining us in a moment. If this is your first time tuning in to Co-Creative No Code's office hours, what it is we invite bubblers of any skill level to bring us their bugs or bubble questions or feature requests or build along requests or any bubble topic actually. And we host these Zooms live every weekday, Monday through Friday, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah, if you would like to join us for a complimentary session, you can go ahead and join Co-Creative No Code's Facebook group. And then go ahead and comment on one of the lives and Kim will send you a link for a complimentary session. We offer one for each of our Facebook group members. Welcome, Jacob.
Hi.
You're working on a financial based app?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll stop sharing and I'll let you share and we'll see what's going on. Hey, Thomas, welcome.
Hola.
We're starting today with Jacob's app that he's working on.
Sweet.
Okay. So, all right. So this is what I'm building right now. I guess, so pretty much businesses can upload information about their budgets for different departments within the business. So they could upload like sales, business development, HR, like budget stuff. And then down here, these are each the cost of each thing. And you can compare month by month or year by year or by quarter and see how much you're spending on each thing. So we have an actual amount and then the forecasted amount. And then the changes, how much it increased or decreased per interval time. But then, yeah, so I have it almost set up here, but then I'm using a lot of conditionals. So, so yeah, I'm doing a condition, like there's a, so here, there's a repeating group for each department. So sales, business development, HR, these are all different departments. And then there's another repeating group for, I call these a cost item. So there's a repeating group within a repeating group here.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess my problem is, I don't know if I'm using too many conditionals for all these repeating groups, because I have a conditional for this, like everything here. And that's based on the time interval that they select. So whether it's, let's see, whether it's like, yeah, year by year or quarterly or monthly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So it's just the filtering is different?
Yeah.
For the repeating group?
Yeah.
Is it the filtering or the constraints on the search?
Oh, I'm using these constraints.
Okay.
On all of them.
So these are text elements and you're using the conditionals based on whatever the filter is. That seems okay to me. How many different configurations are there with the filters? I mean, are there a lot?
3 for, yeah, 1, 2, 3 different conditionals. So then that's for all 9 of these. Plus over here, I want to sort these out too. So I'll probably need 3 for this repeating group and then 3 for another repeating group. So
Okay.
so yeah, I'm
And
not sure.
how's the page like feeling right now? Like, is it loading fast enough? Is it responsive enough? Like not responsive as in mobile responsive, but responsive to user actions.
Yeah, it's pretty slow, like when I'm trying to edit stuff.
Okay.
Um, so like when I clicked on that, that's, well, I mean, I guess that one wasn't that slow, but yeah, so
So it's getting slow in the editor, but how about on the page?
yeah.
Is it
Oh, on the
still,
page.
yeah, like on in preview?
Uh, I'm not sure because I haven't, I need to add like dummy data and stuff.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the layout and everything looks really great. I would definitely recommend moving to reusables, even reusables within reusables.
Mhm.
That would make it easier, like that'll make it faster to do the editing and probably faster on the page too. Um, and it keeps workflows and things easier as well. The conditionals that you have, if the data is readily available from the database, then I don't think it's a problem to have the conditionals, like 3 conditions on each of those text in there based on, the 3 different configurations for the filters. The only thing I worry about is if those filters are going, like if they're going to add different time frames to that. Like if they add to like, oh, I don't want to just see like last month, this year, and all time or something like that. If they add different ones that they want, you have to go in and you have to edit each of those. So if there was a way to like make that a little more dynamic and less hard coded, it would probably make your life easier in the future. But if but I would say like get it working, and then think about how you can make it simpler or more elegant, because a lot of times when you're looking at big spreadsheets of data like this, just wrapping your head around it is one feat. Making it pretty is another.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? Like you've done a great job. Like if you just go to the page that you were showing me before, like so this is an image of what they want, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. Yeah, so I definitely put in some dummy data just to see, like, make sure you're getting close to what they want in this respect with how it looks on the page. It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
So, and what are the different filters again? The 3 different filters that will make a difference?
Um, the so month, each month, or each quarter or year, and it'll replace these 3 at top.
Okay.
And then they also, I think they want to add these filters as well.
As well. Okay.
Yeah, just not yet.
Um, yeah, it's gonna take me a little bit of brain power, but I'm trying to think of how you can make that more, just less hard coding and more dynamic, because that's really gonna save you a lot of time and effort as you like, even just for debugging, right? Like if they find a bug in something and you have to go through and find the bugs or whatever, if it's bug in one piece of logic that pulls the information in and you change that thing instead of having conditions everywhere, it'll make your life easier. But yeah, that's something that takes a little bit of thinking through. Like today I was working with Nathan, and Nathan has a different hero image for each of his pages. And so he has a reusable on the page, and we were thinking through, like, at first I recommended, oh, well, just you can put a condition on that and change it based on the URL. But then I was thinking, but you could just do that dynamically in the original source of that image on the hero image, right? You could check the URL and show something from the database in one source image, referred to dynamically, as opposed to creating 5 different conditions. So anytime you can consolidate, that would be better. So how is the database structured for this?
Yeah, so I guess originally they had it where this one, just one data type would house all of the information. Yeah, they had one table, but I split it up into 2, and then they were saying that they prefer one. Yeah, so I have the cost items. So these are each row. Yeah, each row. And then the monthly cost is like the columns. So like this would be one monthly cost. So the monthly cost has the actual cost, the change, and the forecasted. So like this table right here would be, or no, this group right here would be an example of one monthly cost. But then the whole entire row is one cost item.
Okay, so I tend to go a little bit more liberal with the data types. I wonder why they're kind of like attached to having one data type, but as long as they're not stopping you from having 2, I guess that's okay. Like you want to have as few and as few as necessary, right? But you want to have as many data types as is necessary to get the job done.
Yeah.
And then, so the first repeating group that I'm looking at is department repeating groups. Then within that repeating group, I have the personnel costs repeating group, and then also the non-personnel cost repeating group, right?
Yeah.
And how many departments are there? Or do we know? Is that dynamic? Like, can the user select how many departments there are, or is that fixed?
Dynamic.
It's dynamic. So
Yeah.
each company is going to enter a name for a department, and they're going to be creating their own departmental tables. Okay. And then the personnel costs, of course, are going to be dynamic as well. I think
This one, no, these ones are binary, the personnel and non-personnel. So I have 2 repeating groups, one for each.
right. But the cost of one, like this isn't just one company doing this for themselves. This is like a SaaS where like the user signs up and then they create their own company with their own departments with their own personnel and non-personnel costs.
Yeah, it's a SaaS.
Okay. So yeah, so that means you don't technically know how many of those departments are going to show up on the page.
Yeah.
And you don't know how many like what is actually going to need to be displayed.
Mhm.
So my guess is you're probably going to run into problems when it comes to displaying all of this, like loading all of the information on the page, and then just like displaying it, like having you're probably going to need to paginate the personnel and non-personnel costs at least.
Mhm.
That way, like if they're loading departments, like if someone has 10 departments or something like that, and each department has something like 100 different costs in personnel and then 100 in non-personnel, you're just loading a lot of information on the page. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would probably move to reusables as much as possible. And I would use pagination on those tables. And then I would think through and see how many of those conditionals you can reduce or eliminate.
Oh, okay. And like which parts would you make reusable?
So I would have it's a good question. I kind of wish Juan was here. Because I kind of feel like you need one reusable, like nested reusables almost here, right? Like each department could be a reusable, like not for each department, but just saying that the department itself could be reusable with a reusable for personnel costs and a reusable for non-personnel costs.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, let me see. See if Juan's available to come on. What do you think, Thomas? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Are we talking about like what sections to turn into reusables?
Yeah, and just any thoughts in general about how to simplify like the conditionals and things like that to make it easier and more scalable.
I mean, I'd have to like go in there myself. But
Right.
in regards to like sectioning things off, just have those things that pertain to that specific thing, right? The title, and just turn that into reusable. Why not? I guess you could experiment. I've been experimenting with reusables. I've been sectioning off into more and then going back and doing less. So
Okay.
I'm no expert, obviously.
Is this like can you make this into reusable?
Yeah.
You can make anything into reusable. A reusable is like a page that's not a page.
Yeah.
Like you can't send someone to a reusable in Bubble by itself. It has to be on a page. But the only difference between a reusable and a page is that part, is that you can't send people to the reusable itself. It has to be on a page. And then you can trigger custom events from to that are in a reusable, and you cannot trigger custom events that are from a page. So
Yeah.
It definitely takes some tinkering.
Hmm?
what was
Excuse
that?
me. Excuse me. it definitely takes some tinkering. Like I didn't understand reusables until like I actually put it to play.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm like choking on water.
That's okay.
All good.
I mean, that's an important thing to have in your body, water. So it's forgivable.
Went down the wrong hole. Yeah, there's a few pieces. I mean, in the last few conversations that we had, Tonya and I, we really went pretty deep into reusables. Probably be a few hours of like going through information. But I mean, I could show you what I'm doing, which kind of gives you an example of very simplistic approach. And then Tonya, you can also just be like, what is this?
Sure. Yeah, if you want to share, that would be great.
All right. This is not the one. So I have specific things in saved in reusables. So I'll just show you what it looks like actually on the index. So I'll just pull a create job post in this particular case. And it's a single page, so there's a few things on the page, such as like a job post library, messenger, all that jazz, and they just collapse. Well, they don't really collapse. I'm just transitioning between URL parameters when things are clicked. But as you can see for this one, the create job post, I turned the actual post where you would update information into reusable. So what you do is like when you have the actual thing, like the element on the page already, group, this whole group, you can literally right click and then convert into a reusable element. And then it'll pop up in this little section down here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just click on the create reusable because that's what we're talking about. And then once you're in here, it's essentially, you can work with elements exactly as you would in a page, but just like Tonya was saying, like you would have to do, you have to do a workaround in order to get things to work from reusable to the page.
Yeah.
Right, because there's a little bit of an information barrier.
But it
So-
helps to use, for in this case, what I'm doing in that situation is that on the create job reusable, in this interaction, when I'm publishing, in order to stay on the same page, I'm creating a new job post, resetting relevant inputs. And then I'm going to a page, which is index, which is the same page. And I'm essentially, this little tab up here, I'm essentially searching for what would be the result up here. It would be index. So it would just, take me back to that. And that's probably very confusing what I just did. The cool thing is that when you do this, to go to page index, it doesn't actually refresh the whole page. It does like a half refresh, as Tonya has mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if any of this is useful, Tonya. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, no, I mean, the original question that you asked, Jacob, was whether or not the number of conditionals you had were okay. And I've actually done that same thing on a smaller scale in an app, and it worked beautifully. I needed to, the difference is I just needed to do one search on a whole bunch of data.
Mhm.
You're doing multiple searches on a lot more data. So I just, my concern with your setup isn't your conditionals. My concern is the amount of data that you're pulling from the database and how that pulling all of that data onto one page is going to affect performance, because you can get it working and you could get it working with dummy data and it'll be fine. But when the user actually starts doing something like with significant numbers of records, things will start to slow down. And the very first thing you're going to hear from your client is, it's not working, like this isn't acceptable. And I've been through that now a few different times, that I've started to actually scope and plan things differently, because I've started to see where things break down at scale in Bubble. When I say where things break down at scale, I don't mean that Bubble's not scalable, because I know that's a big sort of like controversial like people say, oh, you should just prototype with Bubble or whatever. No, Bubble is great. You can run Bubble. You can run and you can scale with Bubble quite a bit. I have several businesses with years long been on Bubble, and they run their business with Bubble, and they have thousands of users. So it's not a problem with scalability. It's just making sure that when you're building, you're testing and you're pushing those boundaries enough that you can kind of see what you need to optimize in order to get that performance. So I just see some red flags with how much data you're going to be trying to load on one page. Bubble is not Bubble. Okay. Robbie Frank, who was a member with us back in February, March, he's doing some amazing things with millions of records, but he's not keeping those records in Bubble. Austin is doing some awesome things with lots and lots of records and manipulating things, and he's using Backendless, but not Bubble's database. And let's see, Paul Salvage, he's got lots of different records that he's interacting with on a database that's not inside Bubble. I have clients who are using Bubble's database for thousands and thousands of records, like over 100,000 records. And while you can get the search going pretty fast using Algolia, things start to get a little clunky, right? And I would never compare Bubble's capability to like a spreadsheet capability, like Google Sheets or Excel or Airtable in particular. So what I see, what you're trying to put together looks very much like a spreadsheet, right? Like something that you might build in an Airtable. Right. But that's not to say that you can't do it and you can't optimize to make it perform beautifully. But sometimes you have to get creative. Like I have a client where we came up with, well, the client brought me an extremely complicated rubric, right? So like, and the app idea was to make everything customizable. Everything can be like edited or deleted or create new categories, questions, answers, things like that. And everything's supposed to be super malleable from the perspective of the user, and creating things from a template. Well, okay, we'll just create things from a template, except each of these things, the one rubric, right, is hundreds of things in the database, hundreds of records. So when you go to make a copy of it, it's going to take a couple of minutes in Bubble. It might not take that long in a different backend system. Like you could probably create it in a couple seconds using a different system, but we're using Bubble, no problem. So how do we get around that in Bubble? Well, first we optimize, and that's where the copying a list of things came into play. So last week and the week before, we talked about that a little bit, copying a list of things. So that helped go down from 5 minutes to 2 minutes. But the real creative solution is, well, since we're making basically carbon copies of the same information and just changing a few fields here and there, what we should do is go ahead and have those waiting, create extra copies, right? An inventory of copies, and just switch the owner. And that, plus changing the list of things that we need to change with some references or whatever, instead of taking 2 minutes, will take maybe 20 to 30 seconds. Right. And so from the user experience, now we have it so that they can they can start interacting with the thing on the page, and we can just tell them that the data is not transferred completely yet, that we're working on it, show them that banner while they're interacting with things on the page until it's done, and then take that banner away. And to the user, it felt like a pretty instantaneous experience. Right? But we were working within Bubble's limitations.
Yeah. So for this one, do you think it's just like I shouldn't do this project? Or
No, I think like, so I think what you're doing is fine and it's going to work. You're going to turn out something that's working, but I think you need to go ahead and plan to stress test it, right? So like my developer on that project, he got all the way through the project, and it wasn't until we said, okay, now you can do your final testing client, that the client broke the app by creating, like, clicking the button to create something, and they're like, the capacity was eaten up by all of the recursive workflows that were running, right? So like you just need to plan to stress test it and plan to optimize for it early, right? Like now I know better. Now I know the next time that I'm dealing with a really super complicated waterfall of recursive workflows to create a bunch of things in the database, I'm going to know better. Like I'll be better able to scope out exactly what I want the dev to do to optimize for the speed and the experience of the user. Yeah. I feel like I didn't give you a definitive enough answer.
yeah.
You're like, yeah, you didn't. No, I think your conditionals are fine. I think I would go ahead with what you have and find one of those data generators and generate a lot of data and see how it performs. Like maybe even go back to your client and ask, okay, so what is like the top number of departments you could imagine one of your users using? Or is it reasonable for us to put a limit on how many departments there can be, right? And then ask, and what's the, at the outside, in your wildest dreams, how many records do you think would be in this table, right? And just go and create the dummy data to fill that up, and maybe 10% more, and see how it performs at that level.
Okay.
Because I mean, you could build it just to make it work, and they can test it and they can be happy with it or whatever. And then, you could consider that like, oh, I did a good job, right? And you could probably take the money and run. And that's what a lot of developers do. But if you really want them to be happy, try to anticipate the problems they're going to run into.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can say, I can get it to this point where it can handle this much data. And when we start to have problems, then I can go back and I can refactor. Right. And that's additional work for you.
So, so at least for this part, you're saying I should just use a reusable element for this?
Where you may need to point something out on the screen.
The personnel and, oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Forgot I wasn't sharing.
I forget all the time.
Yeah, the personnel and the non-personal. So just have a repeating group for that. Or I mean, not repeating.
A reusable for those sections. Yeah, absolutely. I would use repeating. And I mean, if they're similar enough, you could use the same repeating group and just clone it, right? Or have multiple instances of the same repeating group. And that's fine.
Yeah, because now that I think about it, because I do need these ones to have conditionals as well. Because these ones are supposed to change with the
filters
years
as well.
Yeah. So then it would be 9. That would be 27. 27 of these numbers. I mean, yeah. Have 3 conditionals each. And that's on a repeating group. So
Yeah, but we're not searching things in the conditionals, right? Like we're not doing searches.
I think I am. Let's see.
Uh,
Yeah, search here. Search here and search there.
yeah, that's gonna break. I'm sorry, Jacob. That's probably gonna cause problems. Because you have to think for each of those lines, it's gonna be doing a search and however many of those elements you have searches done. So that's gonna get really complicated for Bubble. But yeah, I would, I would find one of those content generators, like the dummy content generators, and configure it and upload dummy data and just test and see how it's working. But definitely ask the client how many departments and how many records are we talking about? And when you see when you feel the pain of it, you'll want to fix it, right? You'll be like, how can I make this better? How can I simplify? In my case, what I ended up doing, because I was going to have to do the same thing that you're doing here, doing conditionals with searches, and then it would be for every row. So I already knew I had 1,200 users and I was doing a leaderboard, right? So I knew that I needed 1,200 records. And then I needed to calculate the total number of games they played, the total number of games they won, and then obviously how many they had lost, and then their total points for both. And I needed to be able to search that for the last week, the last month, this year, and all time. And what I came up with was, when I was thinking through it, I was like, okay, well, I could have totally done exactly what you've done here. But what I ended up doing instead was creating a data type that was specifically designed to make it as easy as possible for Bubble to find the data that I needed to represent in the table I was creating. And what that meant was I would have references to the games for the total number of the last 7 days, the total number one, and the total number of games won for the last 7 days, and then also for the last month, and also for this year, and also for all time. And then all Bubble had to do was count the number of things that were in each of those fields for that record, and then do a little bit of math on the page. And it's worked beautifully, even as they've continued to add users, because that's not a big lift, because I was just referring the current cells such and such, instead of doing a search for. So I would look for a way to be able to, in that text, say current cells and then the reference from that current cell.
Current cells.
Because Bubble already did the search and already has access to whatever's in that cell.
Oh, so then.
Because how many of those columns, how many of those have searches in the text? All of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 searches times 3. That's 27 searches, right? Base multiplied by I guess we're looking at 3 different repeating groups, or 2 different repeating groups, multiplied by the number of results in that repeating group. So that's like, if you had 10 things on that one table, that's 90 different searches happening.
Yeah.
So what about Backendless? How would that work? in this situation? Like, would it
That's
be
a
more?
great question.
I feel
I don't
like it's,
know. I don't know if Kim has invited Austin lately. to, but Austin would probably know that better than me. I haven't actually played I actually haven't played around with Backendless yet. I
I've
haven't
been inviting him, but he hasn't been responding.
yeah, he's so busy because he's got everything working and he's,
he's
that's
moving.
good. That's good.
So then we have to,
But the way that it would work in Backendless, like the surface answer for you, Thomas, is you would make references to Backendless for each of those, and it would be pulling from what Backendless would call a view, right? And their views are much more flexible than Bubbles views. And their views allow for formulas in the columns, whereas we don't. Yeah, where
So-
Bubble doesn't.
So anything related to big databases, probably if you know how to work Backendless, probably the way to go then.
Yeah, Backendless, or I hear Zano is cool. You could do the more traditional, like SQL or MySQL, right?
Yeah.
So like whatever, Backendless and Zano are no code backend solutions, right? So I think that's why we're going with Backendless with this project that I'm getting ready to start. So
Cool.
so then this one, I should use Backendless.
yeah, consider learning Backendless for this and proposing that to them as a solution. It'll be an additional cost, of course, but it might make this a more doable project for you.
Okay.
And from what I understand, it's not too hard to pick up. Like Austin picked it up at my recommendation, and like the very next day, he was like, "I'm switching everything to Backendless," and I was like, "Okay, cool."
So is it like an API integration?
Yeah, you would be using API calls to pull information, because just like with Bubble, you create your API as you go. You do the same in Backendless. So you're creating an API to that information, and then you just hook into it from Bubble.
Okay.
And so you can create the views that you need in Backendless, and then when you're using the filters, it's just sending the query for that information and pulling it in and populating your repeating groups.
Wait. So
That actually sounds so cool though. Go ahead.
I don't know what I'm gonna say.
It sounds like with Backendless, you have that backend database that works really well, especially with anything mathematical related. And but everything on Bubble stays the same. All the elements look the same. You just have, like you were saying, it pulls a quick query or the reference.
Yeah, like you're creating, you're creating your own. When you do a search you're basically just running a search on your own database, right? Which is technically it's a call to Bubble servers to pick up information that's stored there and to return it back to the user's browser, right? So you're just saying, instead of querying Bubble's server, like the database hosted on Bubble server, you're going to query the database hosted on Backendless server instead. And Backendless gives you different kind of access to the data than Bubble does.
Nice.
Yep.
That's cool. Maybe something we could talk to Eli about.
Yes, for sure. He's been playing a lot with
then,
Zano lately, but yeah,
Oh,
for
we
sure.
can mention it too.
Yeah.
Nice.
What was that, Jacob?
So yeah, if I do use Backendless, then do you think it'll be fine? Because they have like, I'm pretty sure they have like a bunch of other pages too that probably will look something like that, I think. Let me see the Figma designs.
Yeah, I think you'll be a lot better off using Backendless and creating those tables and Backendless and then recreating, like just pulling the information
Hmm.
into your repeating groups in Bubble.
Okay, so they do the queries, and then Bubble still has all the visual for Bubble.
Right, exactly. So the information will be stored in Backendless, right? So you would be creating records in Backendless with the interactions. And then when you need to display that information, you would be querying Backendless to populate your repeating groups.
So then how does that integrate with Bubble though? For the do I not use Bubble's database at all?
You might use it for a few things, but probably not for the kinds of records that you're doing the repeating groups here for. Right?
Hmm.
So like when you're trying to do calculations and you're trying to get updates on forecasts and changing and all of this fun stuff, like you're going to have an easier time probably interacting with Backendless. And then your repeating groups will populate a lot faster because you won't have to do all of those searches, right? And you'll be able to connect the data more easily in Backendless, to be honest. So
Okay, so use a separate database for like scaling.
yeah, that would be my recommendation based on how you have to display the information and the kinds of comparisons and probably eventually formulas that you're going to want to use. Yeah, my recommendation would be to check out Backendless.
Oh, so then, okay, so like the conditionals, there would be zero conditionals. It would just be repeating groups with the.
I mean, you might still, yeah, you wouldn't have conditionals on those. Probably what you would do is you would just have, you would show a different repeating group based on what the filters they chose.
Hmm.
Or you would change the query to match and then like hook it up. There's the problem is there are so many different ways to achieve what you're wanting to do. It's hard to tell you exactly which way to go. But get familiar with Backendless and start seeing what they mean by views, constructing views with the data tables, because you can make a very custom view with any field from any of your tables, and you can even create new fields that are formulas and stuff. And then you basically create that view and you have an API that you can query that already has the information you want.
Hmm.
So you just have to figure out how to represent it in your repeating group.
Okay. Dang.
Because the difference is in those in the text is just, it's not like, just show me one of the text with the conditionals again. Yeah, these are just numbers, right? So it's not like we're talking about changing the text. They're just numbers and they're all sums. It's just a sum based on a different times, right?
Yeah,
So
I do have
so when you,
averages on some, but
yeah, so when you like, if that's true most of the time, then there's, yeah, you're just going to change the query that's being sent to Backendless to populate your repeating group.
hmm. Okay.
I hope that was helpful and not harmful.
Yeah, that's more clear. Use Backendless.
Yeah, use Backendless. Let's steer people away from Bubble. No, I'm just kidding. I'm coming up to my 1-year anniversary on Bubble. I'm super excited. I still love Bubble 1 year later.
Nice. Dang.
So Thomas, did you have anything for us this evening?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Let's do it.
I will share. And it is in reference to what we were talking about yesterday. So just to recap here, I will show you where everything is. One moment as I gather myself. Here you are. I'm going to change all of this. It's very ugly and annoying. So when I'm searching, it displays results.
Right?
When I'm not searching, it just shows a separate repeating group that contains all the job posts. Now, the problem I'm steering with when I was trying to use URL parameters is that the repeating group that's doing the searching, this one, is connected through the fuzzy plugin on here. And I have to set on the actual group, that repeating group that contains the results, I have to set the search matches the plugin information, which in this case would be connected to the search bar. So I can't figure out how to essentially do what you were suggesting to get them to stack because of the fuzzy search and this search autocorrect ACE matches. The fact that I have to set this data source here makes it difficult for me to just get them to collapse in the same space. Is that confusing?
Well, I mean, is it working the way that you want it to work?
Yeah, it is.
So
But-
if it's working the way that you want it to work, then
Just go for it.
go for it. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I
I
don't
was
want
trying
you
to avoid it, but yeah.
like if it looks the way that you want it to look and it's behaving the way that you want it to behave and it's not causing you problems with slowness in the editor or on page load, then I'd say it's fine.
Gotcha. But
Well, I'm still not clear on why that's a
Yeah.
problem, but yeah.
so this repeating group is when I'm actually doing the search here, when I'm like typing in and it's displaying this search, the search is being done through the repeating group's data source, which is search and autocorrect ACE matches, which is this
Mm-hmm.
plugin.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I can't figure out how to separate the search bar and the plugin and to call this group that contains the search in a way where it would allow for me to collapse both of them. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time communicating this. Did that make sense?
No, so like I don't understand what's keeping you. Is it that you have to have one in the same repeating group for data transfer purposes? I'm not following. Like why you can't just move one group underneath the other and make it the same width and then collapse, like only show the group that you need based on the conditions that you're producing by interacting in the page.
Yeah, I tried to do that. If I understood what you were saying, and I couldn't get it to work. All right, maybe I should clarify what's going on over here. I'm going to separate these two things. This repeating group is this. And then the search results would be this group over here.
Okay.
The call is being made on this repeating group, like the information that it's fetching is through this plugin.
Okay.
So this is like, these two things are connected. I can't keep these two separate. Like I can't put this in a reusable element and then put this individually in a reusable element because I have to set this data source search and autocorrect ACE matches to fetch the search bar's input information because of this plugin. Does that make any more sense?
I mean, no, it doesn't. Sorry. Like, so I think like, is there a reason that you can't put that second group at the bottom there and just bump it up right against the bottom of the first group?
This one?
Yeah, like put the, because those are each reusables, or one is a reusable within this reusable. So public job post is a reusable within
Yeah.
your total reusable here.
Yes. Which is-
Okay. And that's fine. So is there a reason they're different widths? Like the bottom one is wider than the top one?
That's because it's displaying through the conditional, the white background of the search. I'm not sure what's going on. This was working before, now it's not working.
Well, it's demonstrating what you said is it's not working when you try to make them stack.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Down here. Yep.
And so all that changed was the location? Like, was that group in the repeating group before?
In this repeating group?
Or like where, like, I don't understand why moving it would cause it not to work anymore. Or is it working and you just had to scroll down?
The reason I embedded this repeating group here, the separate reusable, into this, where I have the search bar and then the input, is because I can't keep these two things separate. The search bar input, the plugin, which is doing the fetching of information, and this group here, this repeating group, which is set to data source is this. I can't separate these things. So
I mean, you could.
I tried that through separate reusables, but because it's in its.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm not upset with the like I just don't understand why stacking is posing such an issue here. Like,
Why is it causing such an issue?
yeah, like I just don't understand like so the whole point was I said that you shouldn't overlap elements on a page, right? That's what you're trying to solve for, is because Tonya said so. And Tonya is going to put this big caveat that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So but I don't understand, like when you're telling me about the limitations about this plugin and the fuzzy search and like how that's interacting with the reusable that's within your reusable and then the group and repeating group that's in this reusable. Like I'm not like it's convoluted and I don't understand what you're trying to explain. You can use the search from any reusable, like it could be in its own reusable, and you can set a state, and you can set a state on the page that changes when that state changes and affect other things on the page. So there are ways to get the information transferred from reusable to reusable to reusable, right? So like you don't necessarily have to have the search in the same reusable for that to work, but I just don't understand why you can't group that reusable in the reusable, the top repeating group there, like group that in a group and then set that group to not show up on the page, or not show up on the page in the collapse when it's hidden, and then set the conditional for when it's shown to be some state or a URL parameter.
Yeah, I guess maybe just the way I set it up, because I did try to do this within here, and for whatever reason, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I was trying to communicate there.
Yeah.
Fresh, but I'll tinker around, see what I can figure out, see if I can work with custom states.
Yeah, because you should be able to hide and show that group that's now holding the reusable in your reusable, right? like you should now be able to hide that and collapse it. And then what will show in its place will be the thing that's now right below it. But just make sure that they're touching with no pixels overlapped or between.
Between.
Yeah, so you want them touching. You don't want a pixel between them and you don't want them overlapped.
That is one right there.
Yep.
Here you are. Gotcha. Yeah, I'll figure that out. I'll work
Okay.
some.
Yeah. I wanted to show you something though, because I was so excited about the work we did yesterday in the build along that I went back and I made it into I reversed the repeating group.
Oh, nice.
So now it shows up on, I also made this a floating group at the, so I can scroll. So like if this was like a social media feed, I could scroll down the feed, but this would stay here. And then, yeah, so now they populate from right to left. So now we just need to make these skinnier so you can see between them, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to mess around with your app when we were not on a call. So
yeah. And then
sounds like fun. Yeah, we should just have that set. I'd love to jump back in there.
yeah, cool. So yeah. All right. Is there anything else from either of you before we wrap it up for the evening?
Yeah, I guess if I want to search this up in the bubble form, like how would I like explain it?
Search up in the bubble forum like the best way to set up your repeating groups with the conditionals.
Yeah, or I guess just is it just scalability or repeating groups or scalability?
Yeah, I mean, I like the best reference that you're going to find, I think, on this is the ultimate guide to bubble performance by Petter from Omni Solutions. You can search the forum with like maybe repeating group best practices or performance optimization, or look for anything related to like creating a spreadsheet app, because that's essentially what you're doing is like you're replicating spreadsheets. You're just doing it in an app format. Those would be my recommendations for what you could do to search for it. You could also just post an explanation of what you're trying to do. I think the big thing here is two things. Doing that many searches, like in a repeating group, doing any searches within the cell on a repeating group. Once you hit a certain number, that's too many searches for the page and things will start to break. And then second is just how many things will you end up trying to load on one page? So like how can you minimize or manage large volumes of data that you need to have access to from one page? And the answers, like my answer for the leaderboard was I created a separate data type, and then I created like I created the workflows to automatically update that data type relative to the actual data type that I was trying to represent. Right. So I figured out what I needed to show exactly, and then I figured out a way to produce that information in my database so that it was a very simple search for Bubble to do. So that was my answer, but you can look for alternative answers to that on the forum.
Oh yeah, I've done that one before. It was something different though. But this one, I don't think it'll work on this one.
Yeah, like I can't show you, it was a client's app, so I can't just show you what I did, but like hardly any time at all would pass in just the whole thing. Like you would click this button and the whole thing would like populate, and you'd change the filter and everything. You could just watch it change.
Hmm.
Right. And then we're talking about 1,200 records on the same page. So I did extended scrolling for that one. So it wasn't necessarily 1,200 all at once, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Hmm. Dang. Bubble sucks. No, I'm just kidding.
No, Bubble's wonderful. We have to recognize that it can't do everything all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And you have to like think about managing user perception around what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Give them something to do while they're waiting. Make them feel important and busy.
Yeah. All right.
All right. I think there was one question I wanted to cover from your group, Jacob. Earlier today is the one was asking how they can create a pop-up that could edit information from a repeating group.
Mhm.
But you could like click a button to make things editable, so they weren't automatically editable. So just make a repeating group here. I'll just type of content, we'll make it message. We'll do search for message where users contains current user. First item. Oh, no, I guess we don't need the first item. We'll just search for all of the messages from the user. Okay, so now I have a repeating group, and I'm gonna have some text here, and I'll just put the message text. And then I'll have a little edit button or view button. So this will say view. Now I'm gonna make a pop-up. And the pop-up is gonna have type message. Data source will be empty. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use inputs. And so I'm gonna put an input here. And it'll be the parent group's messages text. And I'm gonna say this input is disabled. And then I'm gonna come here and the condition here, I'm gonna say when editing pop-ups. Editing, we'll make this a yes, no. Is yes. Then I'm going to make it not disabled, right? So it's disabled when I open it, and then I have to make the editing custom state yes, and then it will become enabled, right? So now I'm going to do a button here, and the button is going to say edit. And when editing pop-ups, editing is yes. the text will say save. And so the first action here, when editing pop-ups, editing is no. Then we're going to set that state to yes. Copy and paste here. And when it is yes, actually, make this no, but first what we'll do, make changes to a thing. Parent group's message, text equals input value. And then we'll set the states back to no, and we'll hide the pop-up. And then on page load, we'll set the state editing to no. And for this first view button, we'll display data into the pop-up message, current sales message, and then we'll show it. So if I go to all users and I run this as me, lots of I want to chats. So I click view and it says I want to chat and I can't edit it. And then I click edit and now I can edit it. And I click save and it's changed. So that answers, I forget his name. Kim, do you remember his name? Did you see that message I had for you on Facebook before we signed on?
No.
That was like one of the last questions in Jacob's group. And I said I'd tackle it on office hours. And so that's how I would do that. You click here and you can't edit it, and then you edit, and then you can edit it. There we go. Awesome. If you could post the link, Kim, to the, or give him the access to this and timestamp it and everything, I'd appreciate it.
You got it.
Awesome. All right. Anything else, gentlemen, before we call it a night?
No.
Nope.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here, Jacob and Thomas, and thank you also, Kim, for being here. And we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time for Co-Creative No Code's office hours. Thomas, what are we gonna, we're gonna finish refining the chat, huh? Tomorrow? We'll make it even better.
Let's do it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.